and welcome to the Next Brave Step podcast, the podcast that's all about turning dreams into action. I'm your host, Chelsea Wise. Now, this podcast is more than just something to listen to while you fold laundry. Imagine I'm inviting you to join me in my kitchen, a space for genuine and transformative conversations. Here, with the sunlight streaming through the windows, margaritas and homemade guac on the table, we're ready to dive into stories and strategies that don't just inspire you to think about a better life, but give you the tools, motivations to go out there and make it happen. So pull up a chair, let's talk like old friends, and together we'll navigate the journey from turning dreaming into doing, one brave step at a time. Your adventure towards making your dreams a reality starts right here. All right, Leah, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you on here. If you want to, first off, I guess, introduce yourself to our listeners and tell us a little bit about who you are. And then we'll get a little bit more into your story in just a minute, but we'll start with your introduction.
Hello, my name is Leah Remillét, and I love figuring out how we as busy mompreneurs can do less but better. Ultimately, I have been running my own business for 15 years. Chelsea knows this because we've actually gotten to work together way back in the day. I'm sure we'll touch on that. And ultimately, when I started my business, I didn't know how to manage it all. And it just felt like it was so much trying to be a great mom, a great business owner, and do all the things. And I needed to find a better way. You know, we've all heard people say balance doesn't exist. And I was terrified they were right. And if they were, and this was as good as it gets, I was like, I don't want it. And so I needed to search and see if it really was possible to have that work life balance. And the great news is, yes, it is through a combination of a whole lot of different things: outsourcing, delegation, automations, workflows, systems, stacking those systems, using time management strategies, bringing those all together. Over time, I went from crazy, insane, over the top hours to part time hours working 3 days a week. And because of that, I have had my mission to share and teach other women how they can do the same and balance that busy.
Awesome. I love that. Yes. So we met, I want to say it was probably like 2014, maybe,
Okay.
when
Yeah.
we first started working together. Because I think it was
Yeah.
about a year after I kind of started my business.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. That sounds
yeah.
right. And you were a member of my very first course that I
Mhm.
had I had ever created. And back then, courses weren't even a thing. Like, it's not like today where we have all these platforms like Kajabi and Thinkific, and there's a million other ones. There was nothing like that. Like, I was like, okay, I have this thing that I know can help women. I want to teach them how, and I've got to figure out how to put that out there. And it's so fun that you were literally like part of the OG original way back then.
Yeah, it was just on audio too, I think,
Yep.
right? It was just audio clips,
Yep.
and
Yep.
they still play on my iTunes every once in a while. It's just so funny. So every once in a while, like, Leah's just popping up in my car while I'm driving down the road.
I love that. And even that was very intentional. I chose audio as the medium because I knew I was talking to busy moms. Like, trying to sit down and watch a video is really hard, right? But when I can listen to it in my ear, like this podcast, then it's so much more powerful to be able to, like, on the go get those nuggets. So, yeah,
Yes.
it was audio, and that was very intentional, and trying to learn and figure out how to do all that and make all these tracks and be able to show how to get them into iTunes and everything. Oh my gosh, way back then, it was so hard.
Yeah, I think that was probably the first course that I ever took, and I remember, like, talking to my family being like, "I'm gonna take this course online, and it's gonna teach me all the things," and they're like, "Are you crazy? Like, should go to college for something like that, not like
Yep.
a course online," but I'm so glad that I took it and, yeah, definitely launched my business in the right direction very early on, and I'm so thankful for that. So
Yay, yay.
so your business has evolved quite a bit over the years. You've been in business for, what, 15 years now?
Yeah.
So can you kinda take us through, like, the journey of where you were with that first course and what you were doing even before that to where you are now? And kind of like all the little brave steps that you've kinda taken along the way. The idea behind this podcast is to really kinda show people the journey of how these little steps kind of add up and can translate into something better than you ever would have imagined at the beginning. So I'd like to kind of go back to the beginning of your story and hear how it all started.
Absolutely. I love this premise, and I'm so excited to get to reminisce and talk about all this. So I started with the idea, the goal. I really started with the goal. Okay. I started with the goal of I would love to bring in a little bit of money to help our family. My husband was in graduate school. We had 3 young babies. I was a stay at home mom. We were essentially living off of student loans and building a mountain of them. And I wanted to see if I could help alleviate and maybe stop some of that mountain from growing. And so the very first goal was, oh my gosh, could you imagine if I could bring in $1,000 a month? And I just that would be that was gonna be transformational for us, and it was, and so I was trying to figure out what to do to make that happen, and I decided in 2008 to start a photography business, so that was the vehicle for which I was using to have an entrepreneurial adventure, and I had no reason to think that I could do it. I mean, none. I had never picked up a professional camera. And I want to share that because sometimes there's something on our heart and there's just something that says, I think I can do this. And there's no reason you should actually believe it. And yet something in your heart says like, no, but I really think I could. And that's literally how it started. I mean, we sold my husband's laptop on Craigslist so that I could then buy a used camera off of Craigslist. I get this used camera, and I remember I had to Google how to turn it on, right? Because there was no manual with it. There was nothing. I mean, I literally knew nothing. And I set out to try to figure out, okay, how am I going to do this? And each little step, I'd try some new thing. And as I was trying each thing, I would get so excited at the progress. And there was so much that was hard, and then you'd have moments of success and then you'd have more hard. But the business grew really quickly. So it grew to 6 figures within 12, 18 months. And that's awesome, right? Like the honest truth is we kind of have some funny jokes around starving artists. And here I am trying to be an artist in the form of a photographer, and I'm making 6 figures and I can't even believe it. And I started getting a lot of messages from people saying, "Wait, how are you doing this? What does this part look like? Show me behind the scenes." So I was trying to figure out how to share those things. And the first thing that I did in teaching, and I want everyone to know, like, did I have every mean thought of imposter syndrome running through my head that was like, how can you think you can do this? You've never even gone to college for it. You're still new. Like, sure, you've hit 6 figures, but you only picked up your camera 2 years ago. What makes you think you have any right to be teaching anyone? And so I had to really work through that and silence that and be like, okay, that's all true. But maybe I'm the one that can show that means it's possible for all of us, right? Whatever each of our dreams are. And in that case, at that moment, it was photography. So I started teaching these webinars. Webinars were very new. GoToWebinar was a brand new platform. It was very new. And I would put out these webinars that were paid and they would fill. And it was so exciting. And then the next problem arose was, okay, I'm teaching them one portion of how I do my business, but in order for it to all come together, they need to see it in a circle, right? Like how the pricing goes to the sales and the sales goes to the marketing and then the marketing comes back up into the sales and all these different components. And so I was trying to figure out how am I going to teach someone all of that? What would that look like? And that's when I got the idea for the Thriving Photographer, which was my first course. And then I'm like, okay, how do I build it? And I didn't know how to do any of it, right? I mean, I had to figure out so much and I honestly just kept taking the very next step. So the Thriving Photographer it ended up I believed and I hoped that it could do what I thought it could do, but let's be honest, when you're first putting something out there, you're like, "Well, I know it worked for me, and I know that these portions of it have worked for other people, but as far as all of it, I hope I'm right." And I put it out there and I was terrified. Oh my gosh, I was so terrified. But I put it out there and the results started coming back and it was incredible. I mean, It was working. I wasn't a fluke. It was working for other people. That was so exciting. And that course went on to be a 7-figure course, which was so exciting and amazing. And again, like I started with this goal of $1,000 a month, and that was huge and exciting. So to have everything that has happened since, and it was literally just, I think it could work. Take the next brave step. I think it could work. Take the next brave step. I think it can work. And every once in a while, it doesn't work. And I'm like, dang it. And I have to go back and, figure it out and try to figure out what that means. So I did that. And I really taught photographers how to build their own thriving photography business, every component of a photography business. I did that for years and years. And I taught mastermind retreats and I had my course and just all kinds of amazing things. And then in 2015, I started to see the shift where I was no longer taking pictures. I hadn't taken pictures in years because I was teaching and I knew that I could help all kinds of entrepreneurial women. Like I now had proof on how to build a 7-figure course. I had proof on how to have an online business. I had proof on how to have a brick and mortar local business, right? Like I had built several of these different kinds of things at that point. And so I'm like, I really want to help all kinds of entrepreneurial women. And I want to show them how to do it with balance because I didn't do it with balance at first. And it was devastating. Like it hurt my health, my home, definitely my happiness. I was a frantic ball of chaos 24/7. And so I wanted to help women be able to avoid some of that if I could. And so in 2015, it was terrifying because, I had this little tiny corner in the photography world that I had created, right? Like I got lots of speaking offers there and had this presence there. And now I want to go into this other industry where no one knows who I am. I'm no one to anyone. And it was terrifying. I mean, there were a lot of tears, a lot of fear, a lot of resisting and waiting really longer than I should have because I was really scared. And I finally, again, like took that next brave step and it's been amazing. And so, each part of the journey has been really just I don't know for sure, but I think it could work and I'm going to try to where today I have a membership where it's all of my different systems for every part of a business, right? It's specifically for busy, time-starved moms, entrepreneurs who need to figure out how to get the right things in place. We break it down into 4 categories. So it's make more money, have more time, get more visibility, and increase your reach. And then I have these workshops and these systems like, okay, just follow this path, boom, boom, boom. And it's been incredible. And if I went back to Leah in 2008, who was sitting on the corner of our bed in our little tiny rental house as, my husband's heading to campus and we're, barely making ends meet and said, you're not even going to believe what all is going to happen. I couldn't have. I wouldn't have. I didn't know I was capable of that, as none of us do until we've actually done it. And so there you go. There's the long version of a whole lot of terrifying steps that have gotten me to where I am today.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, it's crazy how so often it's just, I think it could work. I'm gonna try the next brave thing. I'm gonna think it's gonna work. I'm gonna try the next big thing. And that's something that over the course of doing these interviews with a lot of different um, women in business, it's a theme that just kept coming up and coming up. Originally, this podcast was called the Wise Photographer Podcast, which was a play off of my last name.
Yep.
And I actually got divorced a couple of years ago and wanting to rebrand and like figure out what my next step is. And rebranding to the next brave step was such a like aha moment of like it was a mirror of what was going on in my own life, but it was also like a mirror of these conversations that I kept having with people over and over again. And I think oftentimes when we're thinking the next brave step, sometimes we think it's this big scary thing or something huge and monumental, but it's not. It's just forward momentum, baby steps sometimes, and
Mhm.
it's going to add up over time. Um, so that is just amazing to hear. So you talk a lot about, time-starved mamas. If you had to share 2 tips for finding more time, what would you share with our listeners today?
Oh, okay. Let's see. So the first one would be we have to shift the way we talk about time. So if we are constantly saying things like, I never have enough time, and we just kind of have a general attitude that time is against us. And that's how I was, right? Like, I mean, I felt like time was my enemy. Like it felt like time was trying to get me. And so I had to start by really shifting the way that I talked about time and that I thought about time. We can create more time. Truly, we have that capacity, that power. I remember having this moment, and it seems so obvious now, but just once again being so frustrated because there's not enough hours in the day. I have more to do than I could possibly fit in. I'm feeling behind on everything, and this is the way I'm speaking, right? And then I just had this thought where I'm like, thinking of some of the most powerful people on earth, right? And they're very different than, well, some of them aren't, but like, Oprah and the president and Taylor Swift, even, I don't care, right? Like, whoever, they have the same 24 hours that I do. They're not getting secret extra bonus time. And I remember feeling like and thinking that they somehow were. And the truth is they're not. We're all equal in that we all get 24 hours in a day. What is not equal is how we each use them. And so recognizing that and realizing I have the power to change how I use them. And the more intelligent I become, the more knowledgeable I become about how to be a high performer, how to be productive, how to manage my time, which is really, I often say time management is really mind management. And figuring all those things out, that was the foundation. We can put every amazing system and automation and strategy in place, but if we don't have the right mindset around time, it's going to be a cycle that we still seem to not get out of. And what that typically looks like is that someone frees up time, but then they instantly fill it with more. And so they don't get to feel that sense of balance, that sense of white space. They feel frantic all over again. So, number one, you got to get the mindset right. Number two, once we've got that mindset part right, then it's time to implement the strategies. And so my favorite ones are simple systems. Now, to me, a system is literally just a series of steps that make a reoccurring process easier, right? So if I have to do this thing over and over, is there a way to simplify it by just implementing a few steps that just make that simpler and faster and easier for me? So implementing systems and learning time management strategies, like when you put those together next, it is so powerful. And I know I'm saying this and this is an audio thing, but if anyone's like me, I'm very visual. Like if you can show it to me, then I'm like, oh, okay. I got it now. So I am so happy to share and let your audience see a few of my systems so that they can be like, oh, okay, this makes sense. So all they need to do is go to gift, like I'm giving you a gift, balancingbusy.com, and they can get access to actually see a few of those systems. Because I think once you visually see it, then your wheels can start spinning and you can start looking, oh, okay, where could I implement? I mean, you can add those ones or, adding additional ones. And as I started stacking, just a combination of, some of it is outsourcing, which I know is very, very scary for a lot of people, but it's very powerful if we want more time. So I started stacking, outsourcing, automations, um, time management strategies, and systems. And then I got really obsessed with finding all these little systems and then stacking them on top of each other. And ultimately, it was like, I started getting very excited. Instead of trying to find one answer that was going to solve everything, I started looking for the needle movers. And so this saves me 15 minutes, and this saves me 30 minutes, and this saves me 20 minutes, and this saves me, oh my gosh, an hour. And you stack enough of those on top of each other, and it is mind blowing. I mean, it changes your life. It truly changed my life. I went from working 24/7. If I'm working, I feel guilty because I should be momming. If I'm momming, I feel guilty because the work is piling up. I am literally exhausted. I used to not sleep until I ended in an ambulance. I mean, it was so bad to where now I work part-time hours. I take Mondays off. I currently take Wednesdays off too. I usually take like the end of Fridays off. I get massages weekly. I go out to lunch with friends. I play pickleball every single week. I have so much more white space. And the biggest fear we all have is that the balls are going to fall. Like we're trying so hard to keep them all up in the air. And if I take time for myself or to let go or to do any of these things, the balls are going to start falling. And what was incredible is when you get the right things in the right places at the right time, the balls all keep moving, but you get to step backwards. And it's incredible.
Oh, I love that. We will definitely make sure we include the link down below for your gift to everybody so everyone can check out the visuals on your strategies. So if you want to check that out, we'll have that in the show notes below. Um, you talked a little bit about outsourcing, and that was something that I picked up in the Thriving Photographer early on, and I'm so glad that I did. I started outsourcing editing pretty early on. I honed in my style and then outsourced it, and that freed up so much time as a photographer. Um, that one, it made it much more enjoyable to run my business. It made me a happier mom because I wasn't like trying to edit with like little ones crawling all over me. Because I had started my business with a 6-month-old on my hip,
Yeah.
and it was it was such a big thing to be able to do, and I think that's still something that, I continue on to this day is what can I outsource? What do I not need to have my fingers on all the time, whether it's editing podcast episodes or
Yes.
things like that, and, um, that for me, I guess, as far as time management has been, like, the biggest thing. Even outsourcing, like, grocery shopping to HelloFresh, like, I have
Yes.
been using HelloFresh, I think, for 6 years now, and, like, every single week, there is a box of food on my front door, and it is the best thing ever, even living out in the middle of nowhere because we don't have Instacart and we don't have any, like, DoorDash or anything like that because I
Right.
literally live in the middle of nowhere, but things like that have really helped out to save that time and
Oh, I love
keep
that.
things, like, moving forward. So, I just wanna thank you for instilling that in me and my entrepreneurial journey really early on, because it definitely has saved a lot of headaches, and made things a lot more manageable as business has grown and scaled and all of the things. So, thank you.
Yes. Oh, you're so welcome. I often say we can be everything, but we can't do everything, right? Like you are a business owner and you are a mom and you do need to make sure that dinner ends up on the table and you are all of these roles. But when we're trying to do all of them at 100%, there's just not enough hours in the day. So when we do outsource, when we do let some of these things go. And I know it's so scary. I know it's hard, but there are ways to start small. Like I love that Chelsea mentioned that she does HelloFresh. And there's so many of those different meal kits out there, and you get great deals when you're starting. So go try several of them. Pause that membership. Go try another one. See which ones you like. It's powerful. If getting dinner on the table is one of the things that you really struggle with, you pick a few dinners. They show up. Everything's there ready. It's so fast and easy. And, those other things, the very first thing that I outsourced was editing as well, right? Like that was my first business thing that I outsourced was editing. And then the next thing was sales. And I love sales. Like I know not everybody feels that way, but I actually love sales. And I had all the feelings that I think other people can relate to of like, they're not going to do it as well as me. They're not going to care as much as me. And, it depends on each thing we're talking about. Sometimes it is just true. Okay, let's say maybe it is. And yet we we only have so much time and we need to be wise stewards of how we use it. And, when I outsourced the editing and the sales, that was between the two, gosh, 12 to 15 hours a week that all of a sudden I had back. I mean, that was incredible and amazing. And as you talked about editing, I have my podcast Balancing Busy. And yes, like I have edited one episode ever, and it was the trailer episode. So it was like a whopping 2-minute episode that I tried to do in GarageBand. Just so that I had set a goal to have it out by my 40th birthday, and I was on the wire. Like I was like, there's no way anyone else is going to be willing to do this the night before. So I did that one single, and then I've never touched another one. That is all outsourced. And sometimes it's really obvious, right? Like I knew I don't know how to edit. So clearly it's better to have somebody else do it. They're going to do a better job than me. But then there's been other things that have been harder, like sales, where I had honed my sales presentation. I mean, I teach sales. I know how this sounds braggy, but how good I am at sales, right? And so it was scary to give that to someone else. And what if my numbers drop like crazy and, all these different things? So sometimes it's easy because we don't know what we're doing. But sometimes it's hard because it's something that we love and feel passionate about, but we have to ask ourselves, is this my genius zone? Is this one of those things where it absolutely has to be me? And, we can even bring that further to, is this income producing work? And I realized, well, by me letting go of my editing, I could actually take on more clients. By me letting go of my editing and my sales, I could really take on more clients and still have less hours. And which, brings up my profitability and my revenue all the way across the board. And so, we have to ask those hard questions to try to figure out when we're ready and be willing to let go. And we can always start with a trial. That's one thing. Like outsourcing is so scary. And I think people see it so it's the end. And I'm like, you can tell someone and just be really open. Like, I want to try a 30-day trial with you. Let's just see if this works. Let's check in with each other. You tell me if you feel like it's a good fit for you. I'll tell you if I do. So there are ways to be able to just dip your toe and see how it works. And then, probably 30 days from now, you're going to be like, how did I not do this sooner?
So true. That was something that I've learned in therapy recently is that there's always options. There's always another option for something. It might not be an option that you would want to pick right off the bat, but there's always an option. You're not always locked into a specific job. There's plenty of other jobs out there. You're not locked into a specific vendor. There's other vendors out there for things. And to see that in business, but life, there's always options and there's always another direction to move. And it's easy to get rigid in seeing things like can only be this way. But when you can look at it and be like, nope, there's other options, it frees you up and gives you flexibility to really shape your business and your life into whatever it is that you want it to be. Otherwise, you get locked in and you become miserable and end up in an ambulance, right?
Yes, which I really do not recommend. 0
Yeah.
stars. Not fun.
0 out of 10 for sure.
That's right.
All right, let me look through my notes here. So I have 2 more questions for you. The next one is what advice would you have for women who are looking to take their next brave step forward in their life and their business right now? It's a very big question.
It is a really big question. I would suggest having some time by yourself with your own thoughts, with a journal and a pen, and just really working through not just what do I want, which is the one that we all have done before. We're all comfortable with that one. But taking that deeper and asking, how do I want to feel? And ask that on several levels. How do I want to feel daily? How do I want to feel weekly? How do I want to feel next year? How do I want to feel when I'm looking back on this season? By asking that question, it can really give some clarity and help us to recognize when we are taking on too much, or maybe it's not even that you're taking on too much, you're just trying to do it too fast. We often feel this urgency that it's going to leave without us. It's going to disappear from us. It's going to slip through our fingers. And if it's meant to be, there's a part of us that needs to trust, then it will be as long as I'm willing to show up. But willing to show up doesn't need to mean at the sacrifice of our home or our health or our happiness. It can mean this is what I have to give to it, and I am willing to give that, but there's going to have to be boundaries in place. So I remember, so in between photography and switching into, the next big adventure, I had the opportunity to speak internationally. And obviously when you have an online revenue streams, you can be anywhere. And so we took our kids and we decided to travel the world for a year. So we put everything in storage, sold everything else, and got on a plane with 5 passports, and off we went. And I had this idea that I was going to have this eat, pray, love moment throughout the year, that I was going to see and recognize and have this incredible epiphany of exactly what I was supposed to do. And it was all going to be so obvious and clear. And the map would be laid out step by step. Well, at the very end, the last country that we were in, Indonesia, we were in Bali. And I remember, this is a little too visual, but I was in the bathtub and I was just sobbing because we were almost over. We were about to go home and I still didn't know. And I remember having the thought, who am I? And then asking the question, if everything was taken away from me, what matters most? And it was instant motherhood. That is it, being a mom. And so, okay, but I also I love entrepreneurship. Like I want to have something else. So what is that going to look like? And trying to figure that out. And the clarity that I got was, whatever I'm going to do, it cannot be at the expense of my role as a mother. Nothing will ever be more important than my role as their mom. And so I started with that as my foundation, and I started asking, well, what do I want our home to feel like? What do I want our life to feel like? What do I want me to feel like? And asking those questions. And the honest truth is, there never was this aha light bulb moment. That is what happened. Photography was like, I think I can do this. I'm feeling brave and powerful and fiery. I'm going for it. Thrive was very much a light bulb moment. I can remember exactly. I had been pondering, how can I share all these different things? How can I give them the full picture? I was on a flight and all of a sudden, no, I wasn't even on the flight yet. I was driving to the airport in the dark, and all of a sudden it was like this download was coming in of, I could see every module. I could see how the whole thing was going to look, what was going to be included, how it was all going to work, how I could offer extra things to make sure, to make it as sure as possible for, the women I would get to help their success. I saw everything. So I kept thinking that that was going to happen again. I kept waiting for that moment again, and it didn't come. And so I just had to keep taking that next step and being willing to like look at it and be like, okay, how does this feel? Check in. Am I on the right track or am I not? And the power of pivoting is very real, and it's uncomfortable, but it's a real necessary part of being a business owner.
Oh, I love that so much. I love the exercise that you kind of talked about in, deciding what it is that you want to do, but then also how do you want to feel, and all of those deeper questions. Something that I have been doing recently is called like pre-paving. So I go through and answer these questions every day. And it's like, what are your plans for the day? What are the things you're going to be doing? How do you want those things to go? How do you want to feel throughout your day? What emotions do you want to experience? And then the last one is, what things would you like to see during and after this time period? And to be able to do that every single day makes me, I guess, like really focus on like not only the task of the to do items, but how I show up to do those as well. And, so I can have, the to do item of like hanging out with the kids, and that's very different from sitting on my phone on the couch next to them while we're like scrolling versus having an in-depth conversation to find out how friendships are going or how they're feeling about basketball practice and that type of thing. Um, it can be the same item, but the way that you approach those things can be so much more intentional when you set
Yes.
that intentionality beforehand. So just wanted to echo like that
I
same
love
thing.
that. I mean, setting
And
your intention, right? Like that is the key. When
mm,
every moment as we're walking into the next thing, and think about how many different things throughout our day, right? I've already had a coaching call with a private client, and then I went and was chatting with my daughter, and I did my workout, and I taught a class, and right, like I've already had, and in each of those moments, okay, I need to set my intention. How am I going to show up right before getting on to do this podcast interview and being like, yeah, I get to see Chelsea and setting my intention again. And so I love that so much. There's so much power in that.
mhm, yeah. All right. So the last question, um, it's a little bit goofy of a question, but it's a question that I've asked every person that has been on the podcast, and that is, if you were a plant, what plant would you be and why? I'm a big
Easy.
gardener and have all
Oh,
of
I
the
love
things,
this.
so I'm
Okay. I
curious.
I actually have it. Daffodil.
Okay.
So,
Mm,
I have two favorite flowers, okay? Peonies
okay.
and daffodils. I feel like peonies are more like bougie and
Okay.
daffodils are a little more scrappy. So I live in Washington State. And the reason that I love daffodils so much is number one, that they're just so bright and happy. So I love that. But they grow on the sides of our freeways, like hundreds and hundreds of them just on the side of the freeway. And I just think about how wherever they're planted, they just grow. Like they show up and they keep showing up. And that's who I want to be. Like that's how I want to be. I want to be like I've had a lot of hard things in my life. I've had a lot of struggles and traumas that especially, growing up. And you can either let those hard things define you, or you can define them into anything you want. And when I think about the daffodils and I think about how, they just pop up on these freeway sides, and I'm always in awe of them and I just get so excited when I see them. That's who I want to be and how I want to be. I want to be someone who just pops up and shows up no matter what happens, that I get back up, and that I teach that to my kids, that resilience. But like we can do it with joy, right? Like these daffodils, they're popping up. They have this resilience where they just show up on the side of a smoggy, busy freeway, and they bring joy and just make life feel a little bit happier and better. And that's ultimately what I'm trying to do, right? I believe in happy families. I believe that when our homes are a haven and are a happy place, we can make the world better, right? Like we make our children's eventual futures better. We make our lives better. Like everything is better. I also believe that we as women, our voices matter, and that when we have these missions on our heart and we get out there and we share them, like we make the world better that way too. And yet that's really hard. It's hard trying to be this incredible mother and have this deep desire and an idea on your heart to share a message or a mission, or have this business. And so trying to figure out how to do those in harmony instead of having them at odds with each other, like that's everything about what I want to do. So yeah. So there you go. That was a very long answer, but the daffodil.
I love it. I love it. That question has gotten some of the best answers from so many different people, and it's a weird question, but I love hearing how people answer it because it's interesting and I really love it. So, thank you so much for indulging me in my weird question that I
I
love.
loved it.
So, all right, guys, thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. Leah, thank you so much for joining us. Where can everyone find you online?
Well, we already know they have incredible taste in podcasts. So they should go and follow the Balancing Busy podcast next. You're already in your platform. Just search in Balancing Busy, subscribe, take a look at those episodes, see something that looks interesting to you, press play, Obviously, I would love to let you guys in on my systems. You can go to gift.balancingbusy.com. And then on social media, it's Leah Remillét. She will for sure have that in the show notes because that is a doozy to spell. But if you're not driving and you want to just pop it into Instagram or text it to yourself right now, it's LeahRemillet. And you can go to balancingbusy.com to learn more about me and find all the things.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we will see you guys in the next episode. Bye. That wraps up today's episode of The Next Brave Step. I've truly enjoyed having you join me on this journey. Here at The Next Brave Step, we don't just talk about our dreams, we take bold actions towards them every day. Stay connected by hitting that subscribe button and dive even deeper with us by becoming part of the Next Brave Step Insiders group on Facebook. Let the insights and energy from today's conversation ignite your next brave step forward. Remember, every small step is a vital part of your incredible journey. So get out there and take that next step forward to the life that you love. And remember, in your pursuit of that life that you love, you're never alone. I'll be right here cheering you on. I'll see you in the next episode.